Touchdown Tampa Bay, you're listening to the Pewtercast.
Welcome to the Pewtercast. This is our final thought show for the Bucs versus Redskins game, and boy, I'm sure we have a lot of final thoughts. I am Brent Allen, joined as always by my co-host Ren Dax. Ren, how are we doing today, buddy?
I'm doing good. It's been a weird. It's just the whole season just been weird since Chicago.
It has, hasn't it?
It's weird. But
yeah.
After I heard Dirk Cutter talk Monday at the day after press conference, oddly enough, I felt a little better about sort of the decisions that were made and why he called plays and things like that. He seemed to be in a much better mood. It didn't seem like he was so lost as he was at the presser right after the game. Yeah. So it made me feel a little better, and then it took me a day to get past that. So we kind of hit it at a perfect time. Recording now Wednesday night.
Yep.
And yeah, everything's it's good. Like I've oddly enough, like optimism is back because there is that slight chance.
I'm glad you feel that way because I don't. So I don't feel much better. I feel, in fact, very much the same, I think, as I did coming out of the Sunday night game, though probably a lot less despondent, I guess. Like I've gotten to hug my kids and realize that life isn't just football. Like there actually is other things important.
The dog came and licked you on the face.
Yeah.
Everything's all right.
Baby. Yeah, it's a going doggy. Come here. So that's that's kind of, I think, where I am. Well, guys, for today's show, typically we dive further into this game, and we're going to try, but honestly, I really don't know where tonight's conversation is going to go exactly. So we'll see when we get there, but we will at least at some point be grading out the game, so there is that. And then we also have our good friend Mark, the ginger badass cook of pewterreport.com fame. He is joining us tonight to discuss all things Bucs and give us the scoop on what's actually been happening at One Buc Place. There's been a lot of speculation, Ren, I know, from the fans, and we're just going to point blank ask him what's happening at One Buc. He's going to let us know, and we're going to find out what's going on with the whole coaching situation, not just with Dirk Cutter, but actually with some of the other coaches as well. So can't wait to get into that. And then in the second half of this week's show, we'll also be opening up the emails. There's actually quite a few in this week. So, guys, all of that and more is coming to you on this week's episode of The Pewtercast.
American badass, watch me kick. You can roll with rock or you can radio edit. I'm a porno flick, I'm like Amazing Grace. I'm gonna some after I rock this place. Super fly, living double wide, sidecar my glide, so Joe C can ride. Full sack to share, bringing flash and flare. Got the long hair, swinging middle finger in the air. Snakeskin suit, 65 Chappelle.
Well, nothing going on around One Buc Place. Nothing to see here. Just keep moving along.
Yeah. Tell us about One Buc. What is actually that's a lot of what I wanted to find out. What is happening at One Buc right now?
You know what? If you walk in that locker room, you would think nothing's happening. You would think that's a 6-3 football team, not a 3-6 football team. And I don't know if that's good or bad, to be honest with you. I mean, I guess you can decide for yourself. They don't look like a team that's in mourning or that the world's coming to an end. But again, maybe that's a good thing. We'll just have to see how it translates on Sunday, but a couple more losses, particularly against these next two teams they're facing, and I would expect the mood in that locker room to change dramatically. Although, I'll be honest with you, during the 10-game losing streak with Raheem Morris, well, you know what? Yeah, by the end of the year, nobody wanted to talk. It was like a morgue, so I take that back. There was a definite difference. But listen, if they lose these next two games, then I don't think this team wins another football game, and we're talking about a Raheem Morris type just total collapse of a team.
Right. Now, with Raheem Morris, I remember one of the things that, was pretty evident to watching the games, but you also heard it from you guys there in the media, is that the team just gave up on him. They just completely gave up.
Yeah.
They might have liked him, but they gave up on him. Is that
right?
Do you get that same sense now with Cutter? Or because last year, right? Like the big thing was, they're losing, but the team hasn't given up. Like they're still with him. They're still fighting for him. Like, has that changed from last year to this year?
No, I don't think so. I mean, you could point to the Carolina game a couple weeks ago and say, maybe, but at the same time, they fought back and got within 7 of them that game. So, there is still fight in this team, and I just can't put my finger on what kind of team this is, though. I mean, the defense played its best game of the season last week against the Redskins, and yet the offense is terrible. I mean, okay, they're fine from the 20 to the 20, but that's great. That's window dressing. If you don't score points, it doesn't really matter. So. I don't really know about this football team yet. I am concerned that 2 more losses, and then you're going to have some major problems. And I mean 2 more losses to the Giants, and then back home against the 49ers. If they lose all 3 against the Redskins, 49ers, and Giants, then I think the wheels absolutely come flying off, and this does turn into a Raheem Morris season because right now I'm not predicting them to win another game. They will slip up and probably win a couple more games, but there's not a game on the schedule that I'm going to predict them to beat, to win, perhaps maybe the 49ers, but really that's about it. I mean, I don't think anybody really realistically think this team's going to Dallas right now and winning, or to Baltimore, and then you've got your 3 division foes at home, which you've already, lost to, except for the Saints. But that's a different Saints team than we saw in Week 1 too. So,
yeah, I mean that was, it's one of the things that I've been saying here is, a lot of people are saying, well, these 3 games, meaning the Redskins and then these next 2, are very winnable games. We should be able to win them. And the thing is, each one of those teams are looking at the game that they're playing against the Bucs, going, "This is a very winnable team." Like, a very winnable game. We should be able to beat the Bucs. Like, nobody's worried about us. Nobody's worried about Tampa Bay. So,
no, I mean, from a player perspective, I do believe that there are defensive coordinators out there that the Bucs are going to face that are concerned, because you still look at this roster and it's loaded with talent on the offensive side of the football. Now, when they watch the game film of how it was used on Sunday against the Redskins, I don't think you're quite as scared. When you see a team design a play for an undrafted free agent that ends up getting picked off on that first drive, that doesn't put a lot of fear in me, in other words. You see what I'm saying? I mean, They literally spent time designing a play to try and get the ball to John Wilson against the Redskins. Just completely asinine. O.J. Howard has, 2 targets in that game, 1 catch? Ridiculous. You take O.J. Howard off the field, Chris Godwin off the field, in the red zone in the second half on down. I mean, I have no idea what's going on with this coaching staff right now, what they're thinking. It's just mind-boggling at times, the way that they're, utilizing some of this talent. It just makes me scratch my head sometimes. I mean, there are fireable offenses just on those couple things, in my opinion. If I'm the Glazers, again, if I see O.J. Howard coming off the field 3rd down in the red zone, I'm thinking to myself, this staff has no idea what they're doing. When Ryan Fitzpatrick says after the game, well, that's something we've been working on, that play to Sean Wilson, I'm thinking to myself, I'm the Glazers, this staff has no idea what they're doing. But again, listen, I get paid to sit up in the press box in the air conditioning and eat that fancy food and second guess and backseat drive. So I got the easiest job of anybody here. Of course, Dirk Cutter is making a heck of a lot more money than I am to make those decisions. So.
See, Mark, you're smarter than us because we pay to sit in the stands and eat $18 hot dogs and do the, try to pretend to do what you do. So,
well, I went to what game did I went to the Outback Bowl last year. I was held hostage and forced to go watch Michigan and South Carolina play in about 50-degree rainy weather and sit in the stands. Now, they were club seats, so I thought, well, this is nice. I'll go in the club area. And I think I paid, $20 for a couple, mediocre tacos and then a soda, $9.50, something like that. And I thought to myself, boy, I'll never complain about press box food again, ever again after I did that. And, of course, I'll probably never go spend money and sit in the stands again either. It's hard when you get spoiled sitting in the press box. There's no doubt about it.
Hey, Mark, it's Ren. Going back to play calling, it's a hot button issue among Bucs fans with Dirk Cutter, especially now that we know it was his first time calling the plays against the Washington game. And you can argue if it's his fault or not. I think most of it's not, like you said earlier, how they're moving the ball between the 20s. But you referenced the Sean Wilson play. They're driving the ball down the field, trying to throw to a undrafted free agent running back that's been, inactive half the games, and he's short. And, and like you said, they have the O.J. Howard, they have Adam Humphries, Godwin, Evans, Jackson, Brait, Humphries. Do you think sometimes Cutter just gets too cute, like tries just to show off? And another example was last year we'd have Bernard Reedy, and he'd end around Bernard Reedy just because he's active, but they never would do it to Deshaun Jackson.
Yeah, and where is Deshaun? I mean, Deshaun, what game was it? The Cleveland game. Was that the one that he scored a touchdown on the end of the round? And we haven't really, I don't think we've seen it since then. Again, we were talking in open locker room, myself and I don't even remember, I think it was Steve Isbitz from Joe Bucs fan, and we were talking, and I said, I think coaches sometimes, as you said, I didn't use the word cute because, I'm a man, I would use that word, but I said, they overthink things. Football is really a simple game, and coordinators tend to overthink things sometimes. Mike Smith did it. Mike Smith was out of his mind this year with some of those coverages he was calling, absolutely out of his gourd. And, it's a simple game, man. It's a real simple game, and they try and make it too complex sometimes. And yeah, I think that was an example that play to Sean Wilson. Now, listen, if you want to play devil's advocate, nobody, including the Redskins, are expecting that ball to go to Sean Wilson. So, hey, we're using him as a decoy, but he should be wide open. And, in fact, you know what? He probably was open. It was a bad throw by Fitzpatrick. But you're throwing, again, to a 5'8" running back who's in the corner, so he's down on the crown. So, really, he's about a 5-foot running back at that point, right? So your error of margin is very small. It's very frustrating if you go back and look at the film. Adam Humphries is wide open underneath. He probably catches the ball. He doesn't score, but it's probably 1st and goal right there. Mm-hmm. So Fitzpatrick got greedy. I think Cutter got greedy trying to call that play. There's just, again, it's so easy to sit back and criticize these guys. Look, Dirk Cutter, I've said it before, Dirk Cutter could talk circles around all three of us combined as far as the X's and O's of football. This is all this guy has done his entire life. He spends 70 hours a week looking at film. I watch the game and I come back and I look at the all 22 and I spend another hour. Okay. So I'm not even going to pretend that I'm, some football guru, but, from a practical standpoint, when you stand back and look at things, they do overdo things at times that just that don't need to be done. Just, I don't know, just doesn't make sense to me sometimes. But, again, Dirk Cutter makes a lot of money. I struggle. I eat ravioli 2 days before payday. So, whatever.
Well, at least you bounced up from ramen. Congratulations.
Chef Boyardee, that's a plug. I want some free Chef Boyardee if they're listening.
They're not. Speaking of, no, they're not. I guess overthinking things and trying to outsmart. Where are you falling down on Ryan Fitzpatrick being named the starter this week over Jameis Winston? Do you think this is something the Bucs are overthinking? Are they trying to punish Jameis, or is it just as simply as they're just trying to win this game?
I don't know the answer to that. And there's really three different scenarios you can look at. One is Dirk is holding out hope somehow Ryan Fitzpatrick gets back to his first 2-game performance, which he hasn't done since those first 2 games, and leads his team on a 7-game winning streak, and they somehow make the playoffs. Or win 6 out of 7 and it saves his job, okay? The other scenario is he's just out of his mind and he's punishing Jameis Winston. And the third scenario is there's something going on behind the scenes that we just don't know about. I mean, look, we all were scratching our head at times during the Greg Schiano, Josh Freeman dealio. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden they're going to start a rookie and Mike Glennon. Yeah, Josh wasn't playing well, but this is supposed to be your future franchise guy, similar to Jameis Winston. But yeah, we didn't know all the things that were going on by the scenes. Now, I've talked to enough people, even today, off the record and on the record, but everybody I've talked to has said the same thing. They don't believe there's anything like that going on. It's just puzzling to me when, that Dirk Cutter is continuing to go with a guy who, yes, when you look at the stats and you compare them all along, they're better stats, but those stats are really padded by those first 2 weeks. If you take those first 2 weeks out of the equation, they're pretty similar, to be honest with you. I mean, Jameis Winston was benched because he was turning the ball over. Ryan Fitzpatrick's had 5 in the last 2 games. And when you're playing with defenses that can't get turnovers, you literally have to find a way to play mistake-free football. I guess Dirk Cutter in his mind feels that Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to give them the best chance of not turning the ball. He's going to be more careful with the ball. But again, when you see that throw that he made to Sean Wilson, or attempted to throw, again, that's a Jameis Winston greedy throw, I call, right? There's no need to go for the home run right there when there's opportunities underneath. But, again, we'll see. We just don't know what the answers are. Right now on PewterReport.com, we have a roundtable we did this morning, and it's, who should start the rest of the year. And I brought up the thing, just something's not right in my mind. Something just doesn't sound right to me. But I was quite convinced after that game last Sunday, that Jameis Winston would start the rest of the season. In fact, I said it on WFLA after the game. If I'm the Glazers, I'm calling Dirk and Jason in the office, and I'm saying we're going to start Jameis Winston the rest of the year, because if you do hold out any hope that he potentially is still in the future plans, you need to know what you got before you write a $20 million check. From what we've gathered, and again, it's been really a week or two since we've really dug and talked to the people kind of in the know about it. At that point, there was no give up on Jameis Winston. They still felt that, he's a guy that could turn things around, but he's not going to do it from the bench. That's the one thing we know. And something I found very interesting that Dirk Cutter said on Monday, again, he's said it since Winston has been on the bench. He said, he feels Jameis will get another shot this year. But on Monday, he prefaced that by saying, guys get injured all the time. So to me, it almost sounds like he's saying this is Fitz's team, unless Fitz has a interception game, which is possible because he's already had a 3-interception game against Pittsburgh, in fact, 3 in a row. But to me, it sounds to me like, this is Fitzpatrick's team, the rest of the year, unless Ryan Fitzpatrick gets injured.
And since we all did think, I think the majority of Buc fans, media, I should say Buc fans and the media thought that it was practically a no-brainer that Jameis Winston was going to start this Giants game. And when we came out Monday and it found out that he wasn't, do you think it was a knee-jerk reaction or almost a human emotional reaction for the fans, and I'm including the media on this too, to automatically jump to the assumption that Cutter and or the Glazers and or the front office, i.e. Jason Light, has lost faith in Jameis Winston and his career was over as a Buccaneer?
I think we'll know one thing. We'll know the answer to that on Sunday at 11:30 if Jameis Winston is not active for this game. That would tell me they've given up on the guy. They don't want to risk injury and have to pay him the money next year. But as long as he's number 2 on this roster and he's one play away from getting in a game and potentially getting injured himself, that's the only way that they have to pay Jameis Winston next year with that 5th-year option if he gets injured this year. Mm-hmm. So, I think that is something to keep an eye on. If he's active, then how can you say they've given up? Because if they've completely turned the page, there's no in hell they're going to have this guy potentially get back in a football game where he can get injured. I just don't see it. I mean, we saw what Greg Schiano and Mark Dominic did with Josh Freeman when they were done with him. They cut him, Mm-hmm. And so I think that's going to tell us a lot Sunday at 11:30 when the inactives come out. If Jameis is the number 2 guy and Ryan Griffin is inactive, then that tells me no, they haven't completely given up on Jameis Winston. That tells me they still feel like he's there, but it's just what Dirk has been saying, that he feels like that Ryan gives him the best chance to win, and that's what he's saying out loud to the media. That's what he's saying to the fans. But we'll know more if that's completely accurate, I think, on Sunday if Jameis is still the number 2 guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's come down to me on a spot where I've begun to wonder, is Cutter just pissed off at Jameis on some level?
I think Dirk has been pissed at Jameis since the suspension, to be honest with you. I mean, he's pissed because of the 4 interceptions in Cincinnati, right?
Sure.
I mean, he's pissed that he's spent, 3 seasons and going into his 4th with Jameis Winston, and he's still doing the same things that he did from day one. Mm-hmm. And he realizes that Jameis Winston is potentially costing him his job. Although, again, look, you go back to that Atlanta game where Jameis had 4 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, okay? Mm-hmm. Threw for a bunch of yards, ended up with 29 points, should have been more because Canizaro made extra point, and they go for 2 and they don't make that. So it should have been 31 points there, right? That should have won a football game, and no one gives a crap that he threw 2 interceptions. You know what I mean? So you can blame Jameis all you want, and Jameis certainly is going to take should take some share of the blame if Dirk Cutter ends up getting fired. But the fact that you allowed Mike Smith to come back this year, the fact that you waited as long as you did to make that change, those are the things that are going to cost Dirk Cutter just as much as the performance of these quarterbacks, in my opinion.
Now, you said that he has probably cost Cutter his job, that they probably will fire him. Now, I listened to your last podcast, the Pewter Nation podcast, not the one with the Darius Taylor. I haven't hit that one just yet, but I did listen to the one that you guys put up right after the game. And when I say right after the game, Mark, I mean right after the game. You guys came quick on that one. By the way, best opening music you've ever had in 100.9 episodes of your show. But I mean, you guys sounded pretty clear. Like, you think the end is near for Cutter and this regime. Like, we know that historically the Glazers don't do anything mid-season, but I'm just curious, like, for you personally, like, should the Buccaneers go ahead and let Cutter go now, or really should they give him till the end of the year? And if so, like, can he really still redeem this for himself?
Well, I don't know that there's really any advantage to firing Dirk Cutter today or, after that game on Sunday, to be honest with you. If the Glazers felt this team have completely quit on Dirk Cutter, then possibly. But, I mean, you guys are old Bucs fans. I don't know. You're sure not as old as me. But I think you can go back in history and remember Ray Perkins last season in 1990, and he was fired midway through the season or toward the end of the season. Mm-hmm. Richard Williamson took over. I think he went 2-1. All the players were like, "Yeah, Richard Williamson, he's the guy. He's the guy." They go 3-13 in 1991, and Williamson gets fired. You run the risk in creating, some issues if you bring an intro. If they promote Todd Monken, he has to be the guy, right? If you're going to fire Dirk, Todd probably takes over. Maybe Duffner, but I would guess it would be Todd Monken. What if Todd Monken goes, 5-2 or 4-3? Is he qualified to be a head coach? I don't know. I don't know. I think the Buccaneers, regardless if Dirk stays, they potentially lose him to a college opening next year. I really do. But I mean, then you've created another hornet's nest to a degree too, where you almost are obligated to promote this guy, even though you're not 100% convinced he's the right guy. You know what I mean? Like Hugh Culverhouse did with Richard Williamson. So I think that's part of the reason why the Glazers have never really made that in-season change in firing a coach. They just let it all play out and weigh all their options at the end of the year. And to be honest with you, I think that's the smart move. They may have already made up their mind, but they're going to give Dirk Cutter this staff because they don't want to fire Dirk Cutter. They do not want to do it. If they wanted to, they would have done it last year after 5-11. They don't want to. They want it to work out. They want James Winston to be the quarterback of the future. They want all these things to happen, but they're not fools either. They see, it's a production-based business. Dirk even said it. Look, I mean, you don't produce, you get fired. Mm-hmm. They're not producing right now, and somebody's going to get fired, and you can't fire 53 players. That just has never happened, and it's never going to happen in sports.
All right. With how weird it's gone on this year at One Buc, we've talked a little bit about starting with the suspension of Jameis Winston and then Jameis Winston, almost like Batman and Joker, like they made each other. Winston made Fitzpatrick. Like Fitzpatrick wouldn't existed if Jameis Winston wouldn't have got suspended.
Right.
And it's just been such a weird year of the quarterback has sort of been the center of the controversy. And we've sat here and we've talked, 20, 25 minutes about the Buccaneers, and we barely talked about the defense. And the defense is really the problem. I mean, it's a serious problem with this team. And if you rank them from 1 to 100, you'd have to start defense number 1. What kind of?
Yeah.
I know Duffner's had it for a couple of weeks now. People have talked about how he's more positive. He's simplified it, which I'm so tired of that word because I've been hearing simplify the defense since the bye week in Atlanta 2 years ago. If you remember my question at the bowling event.
Yeah.
So,
Mark, just so you know, we still give Ren a hard time for that one, just sort of on his behalf.
I mean, he was like Jim Acosta on CNN, man. I almost had to revoke his White House credential after that. But
TJ Reeves would not calling me after that. I kept raising my hand. He would not calling me.
I mean, we tried to take the microphone away from you, and you shoved our intern. I mean, it's just not acceptable, right?
Karate chopped her elbow.
It was a guy, so it's okay. I was allowed to do that. But so from what we've heard, he's a positive guy. The players like him. Like, what else can you tell us about, like, is there anything you've seen about the defense turning the corner? I know you can look at the Washington game, but now that you had a couple of press conferences with him, get more of a feel of who he is, like, do you see the defense settling, improving under him, or is it more of just, coincidence? Like, what can you tell us now that Mark Duffner's been on the job a couple weeks that will give the Buc fans hope?
No, I mean, look, he's not the second coming of Buddy Ryan in the '85 Bears or anything, okay? And he's no Monty Kiffin, but these players, and again, talking to Darius Taylor yesterday before the podcast, me and him spent 10 or 15 minutes just chatting about things, and some of the stuff I won't repeat, but even on the podcast, the one thing that he said is, these guys love Duffner because Mark Duffner cares about these guys. They're not his pieces of meat, in other words. You know what I mean? He calls Quan Alexander before he has his surgery yesterday. He calls Quan after his surgery to see how he's doing. He calls Darius Taylor on Tuesday. How's the family? I mean, he's just always kind of been that guy. You know what I mean? He's really, and maybe it's too cliche and an overused term, but he's a player's coach, but kind of like a father figure kind of guy. And he's 65 years old, so he's more like a grandpa to these guys than a father, if you know what I mean. And they want to play hard for a guy like that they feel genuinely cares about him because, the NFL is a tough business, man. And look, you go back to John Gruden. When we talked to John Gruden at the Ring of Honor press conference last year, and he was talking about some of the things that he regretted, and one of the big things he regretted was, never really having a relationship with his players, because he was so obsessed with, watching one more minute of film and trying to design one more play and, and those kind of things. There was never a relationship there. And again, that may be putting too much stock into that, but from talking to the defensive players, that's one thing they really do appreciate about Mark Duffner is, he's you don't want to disappoint the guy, right? Kind of like Tony Dungy. Tony Dungy didn't have to scream and cuss and all that stuff. None of these players ever wanted to disappoint Tony Dungy because of the character this man has. I see some similarities really in Mark Duffner to that. Now, Mark will growl. We make fun of him, call him Frankenstein in the media because, I've walked up to him before at a East-West Shrine game practice and said, "Hey, coach," and he just turns and he goes, "Rah!" He growls a lot and makes a lot of weird old man sounds. And if you watch him coach in the training camp, he makes a lot of those sounds. I have no idea what he's saying. But the players tend to, and they know he will get on ass if when needed. But at the same time, they love the fact that he's down on the field. Something Scott Rose pointed out a couple weeks ago. I think it might have been, I don't remember what his first game was. Was it the Cleveland game that he took over? I can't remember. But at one point, he gathered the entire defense on the bench, not just the linebackers or not just the D-line. He got everybody who was wearing a defensive number and he gave him. It was when Quan went down, so that was that game. But he did it again last week. You just don't see that really in the NFL anymore. I mean, maybe in Hollywood movies and things like that, but these guys have a lot of respect for him. He cares about them as players. He will chew on them when it needs to be, but they do have some respect for the guy. And Ren, they have simplified things. I mean, that is something that Darius told me yesterday. And so Scott Reynolds wrote about it a couple weeks ago. I mean, there were times during Mike Smith's tenure here, even this year, where Mike Smith would panic because what he had called wasn't really working, and he would say, "Okay, we're going to run a coverage, that we haven't practiced in 3 weeks." And so you've got all these young secondary guys, and then all of a sudden the offense makes an adjustment, so they're calling down a check, and Quan's trying to get it conveyed to the secondary or to the D line. And in the meantime, the ball's being snapped, and there was a lot of guys out there that were confused. Duffner recognized that, and has really opened up a lot of communications better. And, he's like, look, okay, I'm just using this example. We're going to practice 6 coverages this week, and we're going to get as good as we can with these 6 coverages, and those are the ones we're going to run, whether they work or not. I mean, we're not going to try and be exotic and try and pull something out of our hat that we haven't worked on this week. And, again, football, I've said it, it's a simple thing, man. The team that blocks the best and tackles the best usually wins the football game. And Mark Duffner understands that part of things. He's been around a long time. I mean, hell, he coached Woody freaking Hayes. I mean,
right.
He's been around the block a time or two. Well, hopefully we can get them to teach these guys how to tackle, because that seems to be the issue, and I remember that being an issue even all the way back through camp. But while we're talking about coaches, this has kind of been something that has been percolating, at least in the fan sites that I've been around. Brenson Buckner, we bring him in. He's this magnetic character. And, I can remember being at training camp and looking around and there's maybe like one person in the audience who's like watching some other drill, but then like 84 different people are focused in on what's happening with the defensive line. And I got to tell, I was too. I mean, it was just, it's fun being able to listen to him coach. However, I don't think it's any secret to say that this defensive line has not been good. Like, our hopes for what this defensive line could have been have been and continue to be dashed upon the rocks. What's your kind of assessment of what's happening with the defensive line? Brenson as a coach, is he just not getting through to these players? Are they just a bunch of knuckleheads?
Well, from what we understand, Brenson Buckner has a certain style, and he has certain rules that he wants his guys to do, right? Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, there's some people in that building who, are like, okay, that's great. Now let's see the results. But they can't argue with Brenson Buckner because Brenson's saying, hey, listen, just be patient. It's going to work. And if you look at his track record where he's been, it has worked. So, it's kind of a double-edged sword. Yeah, would they like for these guys maybe not to have quite as many rules? Okay, all right, we're going to extend our hands, we're going to drive, then we're going to shed. They just want these guys to go out there and play football, and it takes a while for them to kind of adapt to what Brenton is teaching them. And we've seen that with Vita Vea, who struggled a little bit since he's been back on the field. I think if given enough time, he'll be very effective as a coach, and his style is just a little different. And again, I'm like you though. You watch this guy in OTAs and during training camp, and you just see, hey, man, this could be a 40-sack defensive line, but that just has not materialized whatsoever. And JPP has been kind of non-existent the last couple of weeks, too, although I expect him to have a really, really big game on Sunday going up against his former team. In fact, he called Eli out today. He goes, I'm coming for you, Eli. I'm coming for you. So it ought to be fun to watch that matchup. That's one matchup. I'm gonna be paying very close attention to number 90 a lot on Sunday.
Well, I got last one for you, Mark, before we let you go. And once again, thanks for coming on and making time for us. And, you spent a really big segment, I guess, with us and appreciate that with all your insight. And I'm sure our listeners do too. But let's end on a silly note, I guess, is what I'm going with here. Who's the we know it's coming. All Buck fans know it's coming. who's the guy that you're going to be pounding for in the draft next year that plays for Florida State? Is it Brian Burns or bust this year?
No. I actually, I was talking to Jason Light a couple weeks ago, and I told him, I said, well, Jason, you're not going to have to worry about texting you any Florida State player names this year. Boy, that's been a disappointment. I love Burns. I love his motor. I love his effort. But this guy's a 3-4 linebacker in the NFL. He's not a defensive end. He's a whole 225 pounds. So he's a tall, lanky Noah Spence, in other words. So a speed edge guy, but he's not going to be a Simeon Rice kind of guy, I don't think. But really, there's really nobody else on that roster right now that I would certainly be pounding the table for. But I'll tell you, I know we're being silly here, but I can assure you, had Derwin James wore orange and blue last year and played in Gainesville, I would have pounded the table just as hard for that guy. And I'll say this, I did do some research, talking to different scouts, things like that, and there were some things they thought Derwin was more versatile than Fitzpatrick. And listen, we'll see how they both end up. And look, Vita Vea may end up being better than both of them 10 years down the road. My feeling was an impact safety or defensive back I would have taken Denzel Ward over everybody, right? Mm-hmm. An impact secondary player to me was crucial for this team, not a backup, run stuffing defensive lineman. But listen, again, like Dirk Cutter, Jason Light makes a lot more money than I'll ever make. So this is his job, not mine.
So we have a reprieve for between the end of the college football season and the draft from Mark Cook.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I'll find somebody to pound the table for you. You can rest assured on that.
Mark, is it safe? Yeah. Is it safe to say that if there is a coaching opening here in Tampa Bay, that Willie Taggart is not going to be a guy that you'll be stumping for as well?
Willie who?
Yeah, exactly.
That bus is on fire, and I'm pouring gasoline on it to keep it burning right now.
Well, that was Mark Cook of PewterReport.com. You guys make sure you check out everything that not only Mark, but Sky and Trevor and the guys have going on over there at PewterReport.com. You can also check out Mark. He's got a weekly show this year, Ren, called What's Cooking, which I guess was also lifted by the Allie and Donovan show. But it's that thing that he used to do, like the fifth quarter or the 11th yard or whatever. I forget what he used to call it. But he asks them all kind of fun questions.
Same exact thing, same exact questions.
Yeah. So, but he gets them in there and just has a little bit of fun with the players and whoever else he has on the show, whoever may swing by. So I like what they're doing over there at Pewter Report with their video stuff this year. It's been a big game. So you guys make sure you go over there, check them out. PewterReports.com. All right, Ren, time to talk about the game. Final thoughts on the game. Now, we've already earlier this week done the instant cast. That's all of our initial thoughts, our initial reactions, the emotional side of everything. If you guys haven't checked that out, just go one show backwards in the podcast feed. It's all right there for you. We took lots of phone calls, but now time has gotten to settle. Ren, you gave us a preview in the opening of the show. All that's gone. We've listened to a couple press conferences, maybe got to rewatch the game a little bit. And now I ask you, Mark, now I ask you, Ren, what are your final thoughts? Has anything changed for you here regarding this particular Redskins game or really just the Bucs as a whole since this weekend?
Well, the Redskins game, it is what it is. Like, we all know there was nothing perplexing about it. I do think that there was a little bit of an overreaction about sort of how the Bucs played in general. Okay. The defense played fine. You
think so?
Probably. Well, I think they hit the floor of, like, if the Redskins would have scored more points and Nicky started getting into, like, really against this offensive line, but one touchdown's one touchdown. And 4 turnovers are 4 turnovers. So, not all of them, because, 3 of them are in the red zone. Of course, were putting the Buccaneers in a bad position, but it is a sudden change. Even though the interception was on the goal line, he brought it out to like the 32.
Right.
So the offense obviously wasn't doing the defense any favors. I'm sure all Bucs fans, including myself, would have liked to see a lot more pressure going on. I was really expecting to see Alex Smith run for his life, but they game planned for that.
Yeah.
I talked about it in the Instacast where he really only took a deep drop 3 times to try to get the ball deep downfield. Once Brent Grimes had the guy covered and overthrow. Once the guy was wide open, overthrow, and he had to roll out to do that. And the third time he did it, it was when we had one of our sacks.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and you said it the Buck in the News show. Alex Smith doesn't turn the ball over. This is he's going to get rid of the ball when he needs to get rid of the ball. He's not taking a ton of sacks either, and he only took 1. Right? Am I right about that? Was it just 1? 2. It was 2 in the course of the game. So I mean, and that's just what you get with a guy like Alex Smith lining up under center. Who's been doing this game just about as long as Fitzpatrick has. So I get it. I just see the thing is with the defense with me, I just didn't see anything special out of them. I don't feel like they. Okay, maybe they didn't have a bad game.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say they had a good game though. I keep hearing a lot of people say, "Well, the defense finally decided to show up. The defense, finally had a good game." I wouldn't say they had a good game. They just didn't have a bad game, if that makes sense.
No, it does. It makes a lot of sense. And that's, that's if you get Fs on all your tests and you get a C minus, you're like, oh, that was my best test.
Right. Right.
Meanwhile, the person next to you who's gotten straight A's and they're going, no, you still suck.
Right. Exactly. And that's actually probably the perfect analogy for what's going on with this defense. I'm not giving the defense any extra credit for this particular game. The Redskins aren't. They're not just a bad team. They're an ugly team. Like their coach, Jake Gruden, he said so. Like we keep winning a lot of really ugly games, and however they keep winning, I don't understand. Maybe they've. I don't know. Do they do voodoo up in DC? I don't know what's going on, but. It's not been nice. I went back and looked at some of the highlights of some of their other games, and highlight is a stretch of the word. But it's I don't see this defense really having. I can't say that they had a good game.
Yeah, but that's what really bums everybody out. It's they didn't have a good game. They didn't have a spectacular game. Sort of like I talked about how I expected Alex Smith to be under a lot more pressure.
I think we all did.
Exactly. Yeah. I thought Adrian Peterson had about the game I expected to have from him. He's against this Bucs interior line. He's really not going to get a lot of yards. I didn't think he had the speed to get around the outside, and that showed up time and time again. I think the Bucs had 6 tackles for loss. 4 or 5 of them were against Peterson. So that's about what I expected. But the reason everyone's so upset is because this is really the first game the defense played a game that gave the offense a very good chance to win.
Sure.
If you only give up, 16 points, 13 points? 16 points. You should win that game. Right. And everyone, you couldn't have found anybody that would have put money on that game if you go, the Redskins are gonna score 16 points. Put $100 on the Redskins to win. Mm-hmm. No one would have taken that bet. Even the people who were love the Bucs but are so pissed at them when you made them put down $100, they were gonna take the Bucs if you knew the Redskins were only going to score 16 points. So that's just what's so frustrating about it. And I just feel that it's a really giant overreaction by a little bit of the media, but and by a little bit of the fans. My fan base is on my Twitter timeline, so whatever I see there, even if it's all if everyone's overreacting, that doesn't mean the whole fan base is. I don't see all.
Just to be clear, when you're talking about people overreacting, are you saying that people are overreacting, saying the defense had a great game, or are you overreacting, saying how bad the defense played in this game? What are you talking about there?
Just overreacting to the play, the game in in as in what it means for the season.
Gotcha.
As they're taking what happened Sunday and now they're going, oh, well, now we'll never win a game because we can't score. It's like it's the same thing as what I've been saying the past few weeks is, hey man, it's still a race to 40.
Yeah,
it really is. Like, do you think we're going to stop Saquon Barkley? No. He's going to have probably his best game as a rookie against us Sunday. Like I would put $100 down on that. Mm-hmm. He's the type of back that we can't handle. There's no one
to run.
Well, we can, but he can bounce it outside, and he's got the speed to get outside, and we don't have any linebackers that can cover him. Like, he's going to have a monster game as far as like yards, catches, total yards, probably get a couple touchdowns. Uh-huh. But that's okay because we got to score 40. Like, that's it. Like, and it's the same team, and we just didn't score 40, and we only scored 3. And now it's, Cutter this, and you can't score points, and now we're never going to win a game. Like, the defense is still going to be bad. The offense is still going to be good. Right. You just can't take this game as like this is how it's going to be every week here on out.
Yeah, I did get to go back and rewatch this game, which I didn't think that I was going to. Actually, I've watched it 1.5 times again since the game actually happened, and looking at the different red zone. We had 5 different red zone trips. I think
like
legitimately
6 if you count Jaquiz.
Sure. I'll count the 5 though were the ones that I was looking at. I think 3 of those legitimately should have been touchdowns. If we give them those 3 as touchdowns and they actually make the other 2 just field goals, we're still talking 27 points.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, do what
for a normal team with a kicker?
Sure. Right. But that's what the Bucs do, right? Like we're generally this game. Certainly being the exception.
We're averaging 28 points a game, even with the Chicago game.
Exactly. So, it should have been. The offense really is the part that didn't live up to their end of the bargain in this particular, game. But, I'm watching the defense though before we jump off of those guys, and the defensive line. I mean, they just really couldn't get much going, and I noticed a lot more stunts in this game than I have since Duffner has taken over. Lot more, defensive ends running around or stand up, taking a defensive end and standing them up down there and doing different things. But here's where I kind of came out of this particular game. I was just thinking, our stars on defense, especially like our big stars, our big name stars, they played mediocre at best. And you probably could say that really for a long time now, but they just played mediocre. And a guy that we don't pick on a whole lot on this show, Ren, Gerald McCoy. Watching it, specifically kind of keying in because I'm starting to ask the question: okay, has Father Time finally caught up with Gerald McCoy? He is 30. He's getting up there, but he's not on the upper end yet. He still, in theory, should have a couple of seasons left, right? Like you would think he would.
He's at the plateau.
Yeah. Like he's on the back end right now, but he's still probably's got a little bit left at the tank. But I was just kind of watching him, and what I saw with him, and if you listen to Ian Beckles at all or some of these other guys, he talks about how Gerald McCoy doesn't stretch out. A ball can be ran right past him. He doesn't stretch out and reach for that ball to knock him down, or he's not racking up all these sacks that he should, or just kind of the critiques. And I don't know if it's like this with other defensive linemen, because this was something I was picking up while watching Gerald, and I wasn't really keying into everybody else, and I don't have the history of watching it see. But what it seems to me like is Gerald McCoy doesn't follow the ball. Like there were so many times I'd watch him get in there and he'd finally get past his man, he'd shred his man, but the ball was already bounced out, off to the other side, and he's like halfway to the quarterback. Like he's still moving towards the quarterback when the ball has been gone for like 2 or 3 seconds. Like he's not. I just don't know if he's aware of where the ball is around him. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's something I talked a little bit about. I talked more about it with Brent Grimes about sort of his run fits on defense, where it's like, okay, it's my job. This guy's going to block me. It's my job to sort of eat up the block so someone else can run free and make the tackle. Well, the ball carrier's is at the numbers, and you're at the sidelines. So, it doesn't matter. Right. You're not really doing your job. All you're doing is saying that, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do with the play. That's what I'm doing. But you're making no effort to get off the block. You're making no effort to get to the ball carrier to actually make a tackle. You're just doing the bare minimum what the defense asks. And I do see that a lot in Gerald McCoy, just because I feel like just so he can say, I told you so. Mm-hmm. It's like his job here was to penetrate, get off the block, and get to the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
He penetrates, he gets off the block, the ball's out, but instead of, like you said, chasing the ball down, he's going to run to the quarterback and touch the quarterback, let him know he's there or something.
Right.
That's not really doing us any good.
Right.
Now,
it's not getting him any sacks. That's not doing him any good either.
So, it's almost where he's just doing what he's told and not letting his athletic ability and, his just being better than the guy across from him take over. It's just, okay, I've gotten to the backfield. That's all I'm supposed to do. Where's
I put
Levante?
pressure on the quarterback. Yeah.
Where's Levante? He's supposed to make that tackle. Where's him? And just so he could, I just feel like so he just point the finger and say, well, this is, look, here's the defense. This is what I'm supposed to do. Read it. Look at the play. That's what I did. And he's right. But yeah, it's just so.
But that's where it goes back into people talking about how Gerald McCoy doesn't make a play.
Yeah,
or especially in the fourth quarter. He doesn't show up in the fourth quarter, which for as much as people defend him, and Ren, you and I have defended him on this show quite a bit. That is a legit criticism that he just doesn't show up. Yeah. Especially at the end of the game.
And I think he's had those conversations with Sapp and Brooks. And, was it this year where he came to the podium and looked like, someone, heard he heard terrible news and he was all depressed. And I had a conversation at the Pro Bowl and I need to be better. And was that this year or was that last year?
No, I think that was last year.
Yeah, who knows?
Pretty sure that was last year. But it seems like something like that happens every year.
Yeah, so yeah. It's just, look, I still want him on my team, and I've said this before. I want him on my team. I think he's a very good defensive tackle. I think he's barely in the upper echelon of defensive tackles, but it's almost like he doesn't use all of his gifts, or the hustle's not there, or the want to's not there. And I could be wrong on that too. He works out incredibly hard, and he's he's a great dad and family man and all that stuff. But I just don't want to hear from him. And I don't want to hear from fans. I'm not going to say he's bad, but you know what? I'm to the point where I don't want people to start talking about how good he is either, because you look at his production, and it's just not
right.
It's like 2 tackles a game, and he gets a sack every 3 games, and that's that's not to me. That's not Hall of Fame. That's not all pro. That whatever you want to put on top of it, it's not something to be celebrated.
Yeah,
it's not something to point at and go, "Well, look, we got Gerald McCoy." So, that's where I'm at on him. So, I'm just sort of prove it now. Show me.
That's exactly where I am. It's because I'm with you. I don't care to hear from him. I listened. I saw the press conference with him after the game. And it might just be his voice, his cadence, his whatever. He did just come off of a loss. He's tired, whatever. But he always sounds so depressed and so defeated, especially after a loss. And it's not good to listen to, and I just don't care to hear from him again until he starts performing.
Yeah.
I don't care to see all of his antics until it actually starts working out. And I think that's a microcosm of where I am with this team as a whole, with the defense for sure, is until they start doing it, they've lost my trust all the way around. They've completely lost my trust, and they've got to earn it back, because otherwise I'm just not hearing it.
Well, Washington, and that's what's so weird is that we're sitting here talking about how the defense didn't do enough, and all they did was give up 16 points against a team that, when their offense turned the ball over 4 times.
Yeah.
It's just because where we are. It's just we're sitting here, where are the sacks? Where's this? Well, the offense throws the ball 4 times and they only get 16 points. Like that's an A+ effort. If you use those stats.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. If you would any other team, if you said, okay, the Bears, Trubisky turned the ball over 4 times against the Colts, and the Bears only gave up 16 points. What a defensive showing.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about it from that perspective. I mean, I guess you're right. It's
just that we've seen it year in, year out and game after game that, we were expecting more and it should have been more. And if they were playing the Bears, Alex Smith, Washington might not have scored.
Yeah.
And Alex Smith would have been sacked like 6 times.
Right. And I don't know. Who knows if I'd be feeling different about the defensive performance if the offense had actually done their job and actually done anything inside the red zone, and actually made something happen. So, it's I didn't think about it from that spot of, they did stand out. They did. Like I said, it just wasn't anything special for me. It was just, I like your analogy. They've been getting Fs and they got like a C. So,
right. Yeah.
It's I wouldn't call that the A. Yeah. Anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about the offense. Now, I almost feel like with the offense, we have to talk about them in two different terms. There's the offense between the 20s, and then there's the offense in the red zone.
You mean Dirk Cutter play calling offense?
Yeah, exactly. Because this game, for the first time, felt like last year's offense. Did it not? That we can move the ball up and down the field at will, but we can't do anything once we get in the red zone. It's the exact same problem that we had last year, that we've not had all year long up to this point. But he wants to take it back because, he wanted to run the ball a little bit more.
Which I get.
Okay, I don't, though. You want to run the ball. That's fine. By the way, this is probably the most committed they've been to a run game this whole year. And I thought Peyton Barber looked really good. He was running really well. I still don't get why they feel the need to switch out Jaquiz and Sean Wilson and get them into the mix. I don't understand it. But speaking of that, or that said, Jaquiz, I think he might have had his best game in 2 seasons.
Well, yeah, because they didn't had him run the ball. He ran the ball once.
What? No, but then he also he received. He looked like Charles Sims, when Charles Sims was still good.
That's exactly. But that used to be a big complaint. Remember? Oh, Charles Sims is in the game. They're not going to run the ball. They're going to throw it.
Right.
That's what they did with Jaquiz this game. They gave him the ball one time. Why? Because he can't run it. I mean, he'll get you what's there, but he's not going to make anybody miss in the hole. He's going to get you 3 yards if there's a hole. If not, he's going to get you 1. Mm-hmm. So,
but if he catches it, then he's gonna, because he got us a couple back-to-back first downs.
It's because no one's covering him.
Right.
No one was covering him.
All right, fair enough.
So I mean,
but
he
Barber
did have
was running well.
Barber was running well.
Yeah.
The reason Dirk Cutter took away the play calling was because he felt for the best chance to win was that they needed to be more run heavy to eat up the clock to keep the defense off the field. That was to help out the defense. That was his thinking. He's been pleading since week 1. You've heard him in almost every press – well, I shouldn't say almost every, but almost every press conference in those early games, especially the first 3, we need to run the ball more. We got to get Peyton to run the ball. We got to have a better balance between run-pass. So, obviously, he doesn't trust Monken to run the ball. So, Cutter thought for the way that we were going to win the game, he needed to take the play calling and had to commit to the run. And he wanted the time of possession. You know what? At the end of the first half, the Bucs had 20 minutes of time possession. The Redskins had 10. You know what? After that, I think the Bucs ended up only with time of possession by like a minute and a half. So it was 31 and 32 seconds. So whatever he was doing in the first half, either he completely abandoned because of the way the game was going, or he just completely abandoned because, he fell into what he falls into is just throw the ball, Right. He threw the ball a lot when he was an OC.
So, I've posited on this show and in other places that, you know, Todd Monken isn't calling the plays in a vacuum. That Dirk Cutter is having, you know, yes, Todd Monken is the one who is calling the plays down, and I'm not saying that Dirk Cutter is saying run this play right here every single time, but that they're, I don't know, calling by committee or something like that.
He's giving suggestions.
Yeah. Are we kind of like walking that back, you think, with kind of some of this new information that, you know, maybe he really just sort of let Monken, you know, call the plays, because certainly
why would you walk it back?
Well, I mean, because certainly the first 8 games were very pass heavy, like no matter what, very, very pass. Our friend Chris from Virginia, you know, he keeps talking about there's no run game, there's no commitment to the run game, no commitment to the run game. If Cutter felt the need to take play calling away from Todd Monken because he didn't trust Monken to actually run the ball,
right?
Then does that not maybe suggest that Cutter is not as vocal or involved in the play calling decisions when Monken is the one calling the plays?
I guess, but not necessarily. I mean, you know, it's kind of like that question I've always wanted to ask him. It's like, you know, pick one. Do you know? A, I never override Monken in a, you know, I never tell Todd Monken what to do during a game. 2, 1 to 2 plays, I tell him this is what I want to run during a game, and they get ran. Option 3, you know, 3 to 5, 5 or more. Like, which one are they? And then we'd find out. I just think it was a matter of he has 8 games to go by that Monken, Dirk Cutter felt that Todd Monken went away from the run or didn't use the run as much as he could, or in certain situations where Dirk would have ran the ball, Monken didn't. And instead of all game just going, hey, run the ball here, like, oh, you know, constantly talking over him and, you know, taking it away, at a certain point, Monk would be like, well, why don't you just call the plays today? You know, like, why am I even up here? Or, you know, what's going on? So to sort of take that out of the equation, you sit Monken down and you tell him exactly what I just explained. Look, I think, you know, my style of play calling with my offense is going to help us better this week to give us the best chance of winning against Washington, because when you call it, it's pass heavy. I need to do it more run heavy, and I don't want to talk over you or overrule you, you know, every third or fourth play. So, so I don't really think it. You could make that, but I don't think there's enough evidence to support it.
All right, interesting. Let's see here. Caleb Benenoch is really bad.
Yeah,
like this game highlighted it even more so. The only time when Caleb Benenoch's man was actually blocked and he wasn't blowing through into the backfield was when Ryan Jensen was double teaming with him. I mean, I don't know if that's true on all however many 60 plays that they ran, but it sure seemed like it when I was watching the game back. Like, if Jensen was not double teaming with Benenoch, Benenoch's guy was getting into the backfield.
Yeah. I think the Bucs have the second most pressures allowed in the NFL, and I would bet $100. Seems to be the theme for this show. I would bet $100 that Benenoch is over half of them are his.
I would not dispute you on that at all.
I think it's like 70.
Yeah, I agree. You know. Yeah, I don't know. There's not really much else to talk about with this game. I mean, the first drive was really impressive. The interception sucked. I think that remember that penalty on that illegal forward pass?
Yeah.
That was the play that it just kind of seemed after that everything really it didn't stall, but that's like it's almost like that's the play that took the wind out of their sails. You know?
Yeah, everything sort of turned into a struggle after that. Right.
Because like the interception, as much as that sucked, they came back out the next series and still played really well. The offense did. But after that illegal forward pass, when because if you remember, that was Fitzpatrick like scrambled out of a sack and was running down the field and was about to take a hit, and then kind of threw the ball
short of the first down.
Yeah. Threw the ball, hit Adam Humphries, and got even more yards, hit the first down. I mean, it was a beautiful play, except it got walked back. Got challenged and walked back. And that was the one that made them just kind of – it seemed like after that they were just like, whatever.
And then did they miss a field goal after that?
Yeah.
and they missed a field goal. And the next time they got down there, Fitzpatrick had the first down, but then he made a hard left turn and then started running backwards. And then so he didn't get the first down. And the next play, Cam Brate dropped the ball.
Oh yeah. You're right. Cam Brate
dropped the ball, and it was just it was just that's when I started to turn south on Fitzpatrick. It's just like it was almost. It's like people like Fitzpatrick because he plays loose, I got nothing to lose. But when you do things like that, but you don't take the time to actually like make sure you throw the ball backwards, or you do things where you run left because you're quote unquote feeling it, like I'm feeling my legs, like I'm going for a touchdown instead of being aware enough where you have an easy first down, just take it and get down. And those two, I think those two drives ended in 3 points total. So that's when I started to sour on Fitzpatrick. And I'm like there's like, it feels like he doesn't have any future invested in the team.
Yeah, because he doesn't.
But I mean, he's not. It's out. Okay, let me put it this way: he's out there playing for himself more than he's playing for the guys. You know what I mean?
Interesting. Yeah,
I can pick up this first down, but hey, look what else I can do, because this might be my last shot to be able to take it around the end and make three people miss and run in for a touchdown. So I kind of got that feeling in on those two plays. And like I said, I could be reading a lot into it, but it was just, I saw those two plays and I'm just like, yeah, all right. I'm done with Patrick. Like I just, it's just, they are both bonehead plays that you shouldn't be making. The reason you're in there is because if Jameis made those plays, those are things that people point to. Well, that's why we need to play Fitzpatrick.
Right.
Because you like somebody with that much experience in the NFL wouldn't do that. And, it's, I just got to feel like those plays are like he's out there playing. Like, I got enough money, I got my wife, I got my kids, and whenever they take the ball away from me, they take the ball away from me. But before that, I'm just going to do what I want to do with it.
Yeah. I got one more thing for you, and then we'll get to grades.
Okay.
This game overall was really not a bad game. Like, looking back at it, rewatching the game, this was a lot more of an entertaining game than it was watching it live.
Yeah.
Like, it really was. Like, there were some fantastic plays. I sent out a tweet of someone, this is just bad football. No, there was some really good football being played.
I saw tweets of reporters like, this is like the ugliest game I've seen, since the 70s. Or like a bunch of like snarky tweets about how bad the game was. And I'm like,
dude, I got to tell you though, you were supposed to be there at the game with me, and
I was.
Traffic and all that kind of stuff prevented it from happening. Accident or something, right? But whatever. I got to tell you,
solar eclipse, actually.
It's solar eclipse.
Got into a fight with a pterodactyl.
There you go. Lost world. But in the stadium, it did not feel like a good game. Now, I don't know how it felt watching it at home. I can just tell you, watching it later, back on the replay, it was much more fun and enjoyable to watch just from a football perspective, except for the fact that they couldn't score. But like the way watching them move the ball down and up and down the field and various things, they played really well, between the 20s, and then they just keep effing up when they got in the red zone. It almost became a comedy of errors. Now, as best as I can tell, because it does beg the question now, Ren. What is it about Cutter's play calling, given all the information we know now? What is it about Cutter's play calling that says, hey, offenses can move the ball really, really well up and down the field, but they can't score? Because this was the bugaboo last year, like all of last year. This was the bugaboo in this one game where he starts to take it back. So now we actually can, you legitimately can talk about his play calling. What is it about his play calling, you think, that results in not being able to actually put the ball in when you get in the red zone?
It's just it's hard. This is a hard one, because I would think most of the reasons we didn't get the ball in the end zone last year when we got into the red zone were like penalties, turnovers,
execution mistakes, right?
Execution mistakes, and then this week it was turnovers, which you don't call turnovers. Like, hey, Ryan, I want you
throw the ball to 33 in the other jersey.
Yeah, I want you to bean one at Mike's ankles and have him tip it over the back of his head. And the next play, I want you to get sacked and fumble the ball. But make sure they get it.
Right.
So
that's actually the real meaning of Spider 2Y banana is what that is. That's the.
But then you take all of last year with Cutter calling the plays, and the one game he did, it's somehow a trend.
Yeah.
So is it like, we talked about Mark earlier, is it he trying to be too cute by actually trying to design a play to your undrafted free agent only can dress every other game rookie running back because you want to show how smart you are, or that it will work, but do you really have to do all that work? I mean, why can't you design a play for OJ or Mike,
right,
or Peyton Barber,
yeah.
Is there something to it? I think so.
Well, let me ask you.
Wait.
Okay, go ahead.
But I think it's more of how there's something to the Madden curse than it is to actually play calling. Like, it keeps happening, so you got to go, hey, there's got to be something to it. Mm-hmm. The guy that goes on the cover of Madden either gets injured, has a terrible year, is not in football next year.
Right.
It just keeps happening. Now that it's ridiculous, but the evidence is
they wear white jerseys. They're gonna. All right. So I have two theories.
Sure.
And they could be independent of each other. They could work simultaneously together. I could be just absolutely out of my mind. And it may be we need to go back and look at it. But here's what I notice. When they get into the red zone and they're in a short field situation, they still call plays, it seems like to me, like they're on the other side of the field. Like they're still looking for these long developing passes. And I don't know if it's just Cutter's and this is one theory, is he just getting impatient or getting greedy and, great, we're in the red zone, so now I'm going to take my shot at the end zone rather than just trying to get that first down and get to the 8-yard line and then, bump it in once you get there. Is he just getting impatient, getting greedy, trying to go for it from the 18, from the 20 or whatever every time they get down there? Or is he really just calling the same plays, just not realizing, hey, you don't have a long field anymore. You have a very short field, which means your defense is playing different, right? Now in a short field situation. So I don't know. I think this hits the limit of my knowledge of football play and design, but it was something that I was picking up on really watching this game back of just going, man, they keep, it's like they get in the red zone and a first down isn't good enough for them when they get into the red zone.
What, just for this one game though, right?
This is what I noticed in this one game. I'd be interested. Yeah.
But see, here it is. It's like, it's now you're thinking, like you're talking about that's how it's been all year long, and it hasn't.
No. I'm not saying all year long. I'm saying for Cutter, when Cutter is calling the play, like because I'm wondering, like I'm
okay. Okay. Well, the second part of your statement, I think is laughable. Like if you're suggesting that Dirk Cutter doesn't understand route concepts and play calling because he forgets the field's not as long as it used to be, like I think you deserve to be punched in the nose for that. Like if that's what you think. I understand throwing it out there as a theory, but really, I mean, do you think the guy's been calling plays for 30 years?
Look,
he's so good at it. He got a head coaching job in the NFL, and you think that he doesn't realize that he's calling plays that take 25 yards down the field, but he's only at the 10?
Then you explain. I'm just saying this is what it looked like to me watching this game, that he's standing at the 18, the 19, the 17, and he's still calling these plays or whatever their check situation is, whatever it is. They're still going for these bombs all the way straight to the end zone rather than
so was Munkin.
Was he? Okay.
Yeah,
that's fine.
So
that's fine.
That's why it makes it so weird about this game. It's because it's the one, like, this was the one game the offense could not put up points. Yeah. This was it. Why? Because Gutter took over the play calling. But then you could, like, but you just can't. It'd be so easy. And look, I'd love to be able to go give the play calling back to Monken because you only put up 3 points. But you turned the ball over 3 times in the red zone.
Yeah.
You're in the red zone 6 times, and you only got 3 points. So, okay, so is it play calling? You know, I just joke about.
Take that first interception, right? Take that first interception.
That wasn't Cutter's fault.
Horrible. Right.
Humphreys was wide open.
No, that's fine. But why are you trying to throw it all the way down? I mean,
he wasn't. He wasn't trying to throw it all the way down there. Fitzpatrick was trying to throw it all the way down there.
You're right. You're right. So
Humph was wide open.
Yeah.
Now, I understand that's the reason the play was called. Why are you trying to throw it down to the 2-yard line? I don't know. To try to score, I guess. I mean, you know, I understand what I get what you're saying. What was your first theory?
No, that the theory that he gets impatient. The word is it's not greedy. It's not cute. The question that I had as I was watching this back was, is he just impatient? He gets to the red zone and he thinks, now we have to put it in the red zone rather than, hey, let's look for the next first down. And
you can only get one more.
Great. But it's a hell of a lot easier to get it in from the 8-yard line than it is from the 18-yard line.
Is it?
Well, evidenced by only 3 points. I mean, you know, and here's the thing. Here, full disclosure, okay? Absolute full disclosure. I have not gone back through the rest of the season when Todd Monken's been calling the plays and tracked or charted. Okay, this is when they took this is the play they ran once they got inside the red zone here. I cannot sit here and tell you that I have any of those stats. Right.
So you're taking your whole entire – you're taking it all off of what you saw in the Redskins game.
That's why I said – okay, that's what I mean when I preface of saying I went back and watched this, and here's something that I noticed, and I'm wondering. That's what I mean. I'm not saying I'm declaring this to be true. I'm saying I'm starting to wonder if this is what's happening.
The only thing I got for you, and unfortunately, this game doesn't support the argument, but it's just that Dirk Cutter is not as good as a play caller in the red zone than he is in between the 20s. But
so how dumb would it be then, Ren, to let Cutter call the plays outside of the red zone and then let Monken call the plays inside the red zone?
I mean, something I joked about last offseason.
You did say that. Yeah, you did.
Yeah,
you absolutely
before
did.
even Monken had the OC job.
Yeah.
I was like, Cutter call between the 20s. Let's do Monken in the red zone. Well, if it works, it's not dumb.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So, the Tampa Bay Rays were called dumb for having this quote-unquote opener pitcher.
Uh-huh.
And their roster's terrible, and they won 90 games, and they got a Cy Young winner pitcher, and their manager came in third for the year. So, but if that thing would have blown up in their face and they only won 55 games, then they were dumb.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's just I can't put my finger on it, and that's why I just keep going back to this was the absolute worst time for this offense not to score in the red zone.
Exactly.
For this game, I would really like for Cutter. I think the season's over. Right?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay.
I'm with you.
So I would like Cutter to call the game in New York and see what happens.
Get a little more of a sample size.
Yeah, and I just, and don't turn the ball over in the red zone. Now, if the offense bogs down in the red zone against the Giants and they don't turn the ball over, but they only score 17 points total and they get in the red zone 5 times and get a touchdown and, a field goal out of it. The other touchdown came from 40 yards out, whatever. Mm-hmm. Then you can start, piece things together. Or they get inside the red zone 4 times, they score 4 touchdowns. Now, I'm not going to come on and be like, see, I told you. It's just, it's just one really freaky game as far as when the turnovers happened.
Fair enough.
So.
All right. Well, for the sake of time, let's go ahead and jump very quickly into our grades, Ren. So I'll put it to you. How do you grade out this game, offense, defense, and then the team as a whole?
I give the grades a U for ugly because this was an ugly game.
UGLY. You ain't got no alibi.
The offense, God, you're just so mad at him.
Yeah.
A B would seem like that somebody has nothing invested in the team would probably give the offense a B minus.
Mm-hmm.
Me, you give I gotta give him a D. They shot themselves in the foot with drop passes, turnovers, sacks, missed field goals,
penalties,
penalty. When the rubber hit the road, they just fell apart. So I'm giving the offense a D. The defense, I'm with you. I'm giving them like a C plus.
Mm-hmm.
I expected more out of them. I thought they had a fine effort, a very passable effort, a middle of the road effort, even though the points were so low. But that offensive line was so banged up.
Yeah. What grade did you say you gave them? The defense?
A C.
A C. Okay.
A C. And then special teams. I mean, do I even have to?
Notice I actually didn't ask you for the special teams. I skipped over them all together.
Oh, did you? Okay. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean.
Yeah.
All right. So
you don't have to.
Yeah, we don't have to. Okay. So what I got a C and a D. So what it gives like the team a
C minus D plus if you add.
Yeah, but I still feel like overall it's like a D minus.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
Because
once you actually take in, like you said, the defense, it was just an game for the defense. They should have had more sacks. They should have created a fumble off, or created a turnover off some kind of sack fumble.
Yeah. Intercept the ball every once in a while. Do something.
Well, not against Alex Smith, but
yeah.
With getting so much pressure on him, a strip sack it was kind of expected.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like if they would have had a strip sack and had 6 sacks, what would we be saying? Well, let's see that up against a real offensive line.
Sure.
And they didn't do it, so you can't really say, well, they only gave up 17 or 16 points, so it was good. So I guess I'm giving everyone a D minus, even though it doesn't sort of work out unless we throw the F in there for the special teams. It was just an uninspired effort.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair assessment. For me, I would give this offense an A. It was entertaining to watch, at least between the 20s, but man, as you said, they kept shooting themselves in the foot. So I honestly can't give them any better than a C. I don't think it was a complete failure as an offense unless we just say, yeah, you got all those yards, but you didn't score a damn point. You didn't do anything. The offense didn't. We got 3 points off a lame kicker.
Yeah, but what if they have a game where they only score 3 points and they only get 250 yards in total offense? What are you going to give them then? So,
right.
Yeah,
but here's the thing, though. Whether they get 500 yards or 250 yards, that doesn't change the score of the game. The only thing changes the outcome of the game is the points they put up on the board. So that's, at some point, it's just got to come down. Well, doesn't it at some point just have to come down to, did you actually score?
Yes.
It does, right? So,
yeah.
We're
not talking about baseball.
Yeah. So to me, I think at the end of the day, I'm kind of giving them a D, but I'll say they played better than I thought they did. And that's purely coming off the rewatch. The defense, I'm with you on the defense. They've been getting Fs, and this was an okay game, but they still didn't do anything. Yeah, you gave them 16 points. That's about what a defense should allow, right? So I give them a D as well. Special teams, obviously an F. That's you don't even have to begin to bring that one up. So this game to me was a D all the way around. It was had a couple high points. It was I can't say it was entertaining because I did not enjoy this game. I'll be honest, Ren. Watching this game live, I did not enjoy this game. The only thing that redeemed this Sunday for me was getting to meet our friends that we've met here through the Pewtercast and the various other podcasts and places here around Buccaneers fringe and social media. So that's my final thought on the game. All right, Ren, with that, why don't we go ahead and close out the show for today. We're going to be back with the second half of the show. It's going to be our email segment. We've got several emails to get through, so that will be coming out here in the next day or so. But until we get to that, Ren, why don't you go ahead and tell the people out there where they can find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at Rendax, REN_DAXT. No, that was bad. Is there something? Maybe I can do it in like a Christmas theme, or is that too early?
We need to get you some jingle bells so you can shake them in the mic while you're,
Oh yeah, and then like the Instacast, I'll have like a snow machine above me.
Yeah, that will sound great. Snow machines are loud, but that'd be cool. That'd be a cool effect on video.
We'll have to think it through. Maybe I'll build a
maybe not live on the air
noise cancellation box around my $300 snow machine that I buy just for that one Instacast for the year. Anyway, what were we talking about?
Where people can find you on the internet.
You're always down. Oh, don't.
No, I was reminding you of where you are.
Oh.
Wow, you guys, Ren's got knives coming out of his eyes right now.
Always down, talk Buccaneers football.
And if you guys want to get a hold of me, I'm at Brent Allen Live across all the social medias, and the show is at The Pewtercast on Twitter and on Facebook. Send us an email to thepewtercast@gmail.com. Thank you to all of the patrons who are supporting the show. You can find out more about that at patreon.com. And like we said, be with us when we come back for the second half of the show. We also have our Buck in the News show coming out later this week as well. So until next time, guys, go Bucs.